Welcome to What's the Word? I'm your host, Jaime McFaden, and I'm so excited to have you here. This podcast is about all things wellness. Each week, we will focus on a word of the day, and I interview some of the most inspirational people I know and share that inspiration with you. Join me, let's learn together on What's the Word.
This is the place where I belong.
Hello, and welcome back to What's the Word. I'm your host, Jaime McFaden, and today I am so pumped because we are bringing back a guest that everyone has requested to come back from season 1. This is Dr. Chris Lee. He is one of my favorite people because he is so knowledgeable, he is so entertaining, and he is just so beautiful. Is it okay that I say that? He is just stunning. So
Take me on a date first. Good as well.
So I am so excited to have not only someone who I look up to in so many ways, but he is a ray of light to this world. He has so many beautiful gems. I call him my unicorn man. So here he is with no further ado, Dr. Chris Lee, Mr. Neuroscience himself. Welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Always just happy to be here and jam with you, even if we're talking about, picking our nose. But we have an important topic to talk about today, which is sleep, right?
That's right. So the word of the day, everyone, by super popular request, is sleep, which is a condition of the body and mind, which typically recurs for several hours every night. We'll also tap into some rest. So let's just dive right in here. When it comes to sleep, it seems like it is an issue that many of us suffer from, whether it's we live in the mindset of go, 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 I'll sleep when I die, maybe I don't really need sleep or whatever else. Can you just lay something down here for anyone listening that's like, oh, ding, 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 that's me.
Yeah.
Do we need sleep? We need
sleep. It's minorly important. So for those of you that have ever made cookies at home, with grandma, and then you mix it with the wood spoon, and then you try to lick the wood spoon, and eventually you're like, I gotta put this whole wood spoon in my mouth. And you're like, that's too big for my mouth. I'm going to do that. We're going to feed you a lot of scientific facts on sleep. So if it's like, oh God, that's a lot of cookie dough in my mouth at one time. It's okay, because we're going to get to the very practical, actionable steps. But I feel like the literature that's been out has been really important. So let's just start at base camp. Let's talk about testicles. So men that, I know you got to start somewhere, right? Might as well. And I can't even I got that first line. I won't even take credit for it. That line's not mine. It's from a sleep researcher that was talking about this. That was the introduction to his TED Talk. Can you imagine just firing off a TED Talk? We're going to talk about testicles today. But it is a really important place to kind of start, especially as we age, typically around the age of 40 for gentlemen, typically around the age of 45 for women. We start to have a decrease in our secondary sex hormones, estrogen, testosterone, really, really important. But what we find is men that get 4 to 5 hours of sleep have smaller testicles, quite literally a statistically significant smaller size, which directly correlates with the decreased ability to produce testosterone, which we desperately need. And women are not better off whatsoever. If they get 4 to 5 hours of sleep, it directly affects their estrogen, also directs their testosterone, starts to mess with menses and all of these other different things, right? Now, what's really significant to a lot of these new studies that are coming out is that if you're getting somewhere between 4 and 5 hours of sleep, and that's just sleep in general, it could be really shoddy sleep too, you're 10 years older than a counterpart that's getting 10 or significantly good sleep at 8 hours. So if you're getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep versus somebody that's getting 8 hours of sleep, adequate sleep, we would call that, you are genetically, biologically 10 years older than that person. Sleep is so important to everything because this is when the body rests and repairs. So that's kind of phase 1 of this. Phase 2 is what we all want to do, learn and transform and change our own lives, right? When you go into sleep, we go from essentially waking beta, which is a very fast brainwave. We go through alpha, which is kind of that I don't know if I'm awake or asleep, into theta, where it's I think I'm kind of definitely asleep, but I still have a little motor control and function. And then eventually you go into delta. Now, delta are these large, grandiose brain waves, and this is when the brain starts to do rest and repair. So if you do a bunch of bicep curls, you build up lactic acid, right? And that's when we have the inability to use oxygen and we convert it over to different sugars, and then we produce lactic acid on the back end of that. Our nervous system does something very similar, and we start to produce these metabolites, which build up inside of the nervous system, and they can manifest as brain fog, they can manifest as depression, they can manifest as anxiety. We know that the more buildup you have of those, the less optimized your brain actually is. Well, how do we get rid of those? Turns out they really like to collect in an area of the brain called the hippocampus. The hippocampus has a ton of different functions to it, has a little bit to do with smell, has a little bit to do with this, but the primary function of it is to create long-term potentiation for our memories. We call that learning. Now, if you get 4 to 5 hours of sleep versus if you're getting 8 hours of sleep, your ability to create long-term learning, mental, physical, emotional, cognitive, intellectual, goes down by 40% according to this research study. That's a lot. Like that's a ton. Like I can't, like 40% in research is like just I was asking, is swearing like meteor? It's a shit ton. That's a lot. Like that's a very significant number. But what's also really fascinating is that during deep sleep, on the way up to the very top of that brainwave, that deep delta, we have these like bursts of energy that kind of come out. We call them sleep spindles. And when we used to like study these things, we're like, what the heck is actually going on? Well, those sleep spindles are when we activate these deep states of like memory consolidation. So when you're in your deepest sleep and you're kind of like, oh, I'm kind of like reliving an experience that I had, these sleep spindles and these bursts of energy that kind of come through start to mirror in with like gamma waves, which is another very fast brain wave, and we create neuroemotional binding, which essentially says we're taking the emotions and the activities of the day and we're putting them into long-term storage. You do not get that emotional learning if you don't get into deep sleep. So all of these things like really tie together into a really bad thing. And like the longest, like the best case study for like how important is sleep is something that 1.6 billion people do twice per year, daylight savings time. So this research study came out, and this is like insane. In the springtime, I gotta make sure I get these right. In the springtime, when we lose an hour of sleep, that next day, that Sunday, heart attacks go up 24%. 24%. That is, I like, that's insane. Again, anything over like 2 or 3% is like, that's statistically significant, 24%. But in the fall time, when we all gain an hour of sleep, the inverse happens, where we lose heart attacks, decreases by 21%. Like sleep is critical to like everything. And it's really important to understand how to get deep sleep. But again, another thing that's really, really important that we need to talk about is immunity. At nighttime, you produce quality, hopefully quality in the middle of this deep sleep, natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are essentially your immune system, like assassins, for lack of better terms. Now, what we see is that your poor quality of sleep will decrease the efficiency and the effectiveness of the natural killer cells that you have. So your little like immunity ninjas are like kind of like immunity like white belts that are like 6 years old. Like they kind of know a little bit of karate, but like need some assassins to kind of go after like all the toxins that are built up in your body and all the other things. Like, because if you didn't know, every single human being on the face of the planet right now has cancer floating around your body, and your natural killer cells are just way better at that than your cancer cells are at growing. So they kill the cancer cells. Like cancer is like genetic. Like it doesn't just appear from like poor environment. Like everybody has the ability to produce cancer. It's inside of our genetics. Now, what we also see is that people that have poor quality of sleep, again, like this is like 4 to 5 hours is what these research studies are doing, have an increase in 3 very like important genetics. So when you get poor quality sleep, you have the decreased effectiveness or expression of 711 genes, 711 genes that are all negative in the way that they impact your health. This includes genes that are going to increase inflammation because the system didn't have enough time to rest and recover. So it needs to create inflammation to make sure that you can at least survive. Has one that increases tumor growth. You literally have genes that increase tumor growth, which comes up when you have sleep. And then the last one is stress oxidation, which is just cellular or genetic issues. Sleep is really, really important. Like I hope all of those things, like if you want like better quality of life, like I get this question all the time. Dr. Chris, I want one thing to make my life like infinitely better. Like, is there a silver bullet? Is there something that's better? Yeah, it's sleep. Like you need to become obsessed with sleep, whether you have depression, anxiety, I don't care what, sleep, get better and better and better and better at sleep. And then when you think you got a little bit better, like try to have more of that. And there's also a ton of data coming out that's showing people that have Alzheimer's and dementia, which we can now see people in their early 20s and 30s have like signs of this coming up. They suck at sleep. Like we just, as a community, really blow at sleeping. So hopefully we can dive in how to get better sleep, how to turn on natural melatonin, how to turn down cortisol, and go into some of those conversations too, because those are critical to getting quality sleep too. So that was like the
100%.
spoon, like here,
I
eat
love
this.
it. No, you're please like that. That spoon was well delicious. That cookie dough is so good, and I can't wait to dive into more of this. So, one question that just came up for me that I have to ask is, I am someone who was an insomniac for a long period of time, and now sleep and I are besties. And I even take naps when I feel like I need it. Like I love sleep, and I had to make many, many changes over time, and it was not like an overnight thing. Um, but for anyone that's listening right now who might be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm feeling what Jamie's saying. Like maybe I wasn't so great at sleep and I've gotten better now. Are the negative or adverse effects of those 4 to 5 hours or insomnia type things, can they be reversible, or is it
Yeah,
like you're doomed?
100%. No, they can definitely be reversible. But so the thing is, especially with like Alzheimer's and like neurodegenerative disorders that like start to eat away at your gray matter, you only have so much gray matter that you have. So if you get to the period of time in life where it's like, that is like a really bad level to get to, where like you're starting to get signs of like beta amyloid plaques building up in like that gray space, you have a lot of work to do. And like the really great example and the unfortunate example, my grandpa, who's pushing like 85 right now, definitely is like on his way, like has a lot of signs of dementia and Alzheimer's and stuff like that. But was in the military, and the military said like 5 hours, like you got 6 hours of sleep last night. Oh my God, you're sleeping so much. Like, no, like you need that quality 8 hours. And we can see this even in IQ scores. Like if you get poor quality sleep, it's like having 2 to 3 beers and you're inebriated. That's how much it impacts you. Like you need to have that sleep. But yes, those things are absolutely reversible with like lifestyle changes and just getting better quality sleep too. Like that's the thing, is like you're never truly screwed unless you go past like the critical mass point. But we don't know what the critical mass point of everybody is. So like critical mass is the amount of like inertia or like catalyst required to create a chemical reaction. Like it's a bunch of fancy words to say like, what point do you like stand on the teeter totter and like eat shit on the other side that you can't go back and undo the shit eating? That's what critical mass is essentially in our nervous system. So how do you prevent like getting closer and closer to like that pivot point and go like, I'm going to go sit on the other end of like health, wellness, and longevity. And now there's literally places on the planet that are studying like longevity. And like one of the things that constantly comes up is like the number one thing, the only predictive model that we have, all cause mortality going down, is a decrease in inflammation. Guess what does that? Sleep. Like an all cause mortality to like beat out everything is really, really challenging. Like inside of like longevity research, it is like the golden pony. It's like the thing that we worship. Like, how do you create all cause mortality decrease inflammation via sleep? And it's like, oh, wow, that's amazing. But it really does decrease it in such a statistically significant way. It's quite amazing.
Oh, love this so much. Okay, so now we're going to dive into, for those that are listening, because I guarantee people are going, okay, well, what do we do? What do we do?
Right.
Or I've tried this, I've tried that, I've tried this, da, 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 whatever. And I hear it all the time. I have clients who, if they have knee pain, or they get, they're stressed from the day, or they're, drinking to take the edge off from whatever was going on, or they're, the only way they can get rest is by taking some sort of a medication that was prescribed to them. Otherwise, forget it. So let's just dive into whatever you can offer us on how we can get better sleep starting right now. What do we need to do?
Yeah, for sure. So there's so many different things. There's two things that kind of like beat out everything else when it comes to quality sleep. One of them is unfortunately going to be like removing like alcoholic beverages, and caffeine has a half-life of 6 hours. So like my goal is consistently to not consume caffeine after 1 p.m. in the afternoon. And I do that rather strictly. So that's huge. The other thing is alcohol is a depressant. It is not a relaxant. So when you consume alcohol as like a nightcap, like it limits your ability to go into deep sleep because you're in an altered state. So if you consume alcohol, like if you can consume alcohol like 3 hours before going to bed, because it takes 3 hours to metabolize one drink, I would highly recommend that. Like nightcaps are not super good. And I know comment section is going to be loaded, but like Dr. Chris, like, what about marijuana? Like, and what about the drugs? Like, what if I have to smoke before I go to bed? Consistently, the research on this is showing that if you smoke before you go to bed, if you consume edibles before you go to bed, you feel inebriated and relaxed, but your quality of sleep is trash. Like, you hardly touch deep sleep when you're in that inebriated state, especially if you're consuming edibles, which have a half-life of like what we think is like 4 to 6 hours. Like, you're inebriated in sleep for 4 to 6 hours. Like, you're not getting good sleep, right? So those are really, really important, really critical factors. The other thing that is like, these things are not like fancy. Like, I'm not like rolling out the Lamborghini to like, these are the things that are radically like, take this drug or like lick this toad, like those types of things. Regularity, the consistency. And this is such a killer. And I know for my parents out there, like, this is like the killer of dreams. Going to bed and waking up at the same time is so important because your brain is like built on pattern recognition. So like, it shouldn't change on the weekends. It shouldn't change during the weekdays. Like, if you come to my house, like, Dr. Chris is up at 4 a.m. every single day. Dr. Chris is asleep by like 10 p.m. every single night. Like, it's the same thing, like every single day. And like, some of you are probably like, oh, wait, but that's like 6. He's not doing like the right sleep thing. Right now,
I was just like, wait, how many?
Yeah, right. Like, everybody's like, oh, we got to keep it. Please keep those things accountable. So for those of you that don't know, I get what it's like to like have a kid. My kid's 4 years old right now. So like, sometimes she wakes up at 5 a.m. And there's certain things that are like more important to my mental health that are doing it. But like right now, I've been able to optimize my sleep. So I don't have a sleep window that's as long as most people, which is a very long conversation. So most people take about 45 minutes to get into that first REM deep sleep. I can get there in like 15 minutes through a bunch of optimization, which is like not important right now, right? So all of that to say, consistency is really important. Go to bed at the same time. The other thing that is going to just destroy lives, stop bringing technology into the bedroom. The bedroom should only be for naked wrestling and sleeping. That is it. Don't confuse your system because your brain is built on pattern recognition. So if you go into the bedroom and you're bringing your phone, you're bringing in something that quite literally stimulates your opioid receptors, right? It's a drug because you have this novel experience every time you scroll, and then you're putting the blue light in. Blue light stimulates cortisol. So now you have an excitatory cortisol like flowing through your system. So it's like really hard to go to sleep now. All of these different things play in. The other thing that's really important is lowering the temperature of your body. If you can lower your body temperature or the room, like the research says that like 65 degrees is like the best temperature that you can kind of like go to bed at. But for me, I have a little ice tub out in my garage. Shout out to Sam's Club for the $120 chest freezer that I siliconed up, and I fill it with like water. And then I jump in there. It's at 45 degrees, sit in there for 5 minutes. And that's one of the things that allows me to have such a short sleep transition because my body usually spends 45 minutes getting cold enough to like optimize blood flow, right? That's the big thing, is it wants to create vasodilation in like primary organs. So it can do rest and repair. The brain is one of those. That's why these big, deep, grandiose waves are very slow. They create these rhythmic patterns. Brain goes, oh, great. Now we can open up the rest of this, opens up the blood-brain barrier, and allows us to diffuse better oxygen, blood nutrients, clear out the metabolites, lets the glial cells kind of do that. Glial cells are your nervous system's immune system. And those have to be able to function. They need blood flow and oxygen in order to go do that, to suck up all the metabolites. Like, there's so many different hacks that you can do, but the things that are most important to this conversation today, make your transition windows from like waking life to sleep very regimented, right? And have the consistency to go do that. So at like 9 o'clock, my house is cleaned and I am like reading a book and I'm journaling with my lavender tea. I have created triggers, right? So at 9 o'clock, you can find me drinking lavender tea, like I would say 95% of the time, drinking lavender tea and like reading a book and just chilling. What I'm trying to do is turn down the volume of stimulation, turn down all the sassiness of my nervous system and go, hey, just like, let's just talk about what happened today so that my system isn't like, as I'm going to sleep, like, did you turn off the oven? Like, is the oven still on? Does it smell like gas in here? Like all the thoughts that you have at night, put them onto paper, right? Journal is beautiful to kind of shut down the nervous system. And then turning down all the tech. Like, this is going to like kill some people's dreams, but like, you need to turn off the tech. No TV, no any of those things, because blue light is a whole thing, which we did an entire conversation on that's somewhere inside of The way like it's all inside of there somewhere, but these things are critical to helping you perform at a better level. And then the other thing is just in the morning time, if you can get direct sunlight during the sunrise or get bright light into your eyes first thing in the morning, creates this dopaminergic response. Dopamine is a neuromodulator, not a neurotransmitter that works as a neurotransmitter. Sometimes this is a bunch of caveated words that don't really mean a ton. But what happens is in the morning time, when you look into the sun or look around the sun, that spectrum and intensity of light releases an adequate amount of cortisol to wake up the system, a healthy amount of cortisol. Cortisol is not bad. Cortisol is actually good. Again, I know we've talked about this in the past as well. What you want to have is that cortisol response and have the signal turn on your reticular activating system. Primary function of your reticular activating system is to look at light cycles, because that's the consistency that we've evolved from is consistent. The sun comes up, comes down, sun comes up, sun comes down. It's done that over hundreds of thousands of years, right? So our system is primed to look at those things. So in the morning, we create excitatory hormones, and then at nighttime, we release melatonin when we get that same thing. So right now it's like what 4 p.m. on the East Coast, and like the sun's starting to go down. So it's starting to get pinks and oranges. So after this, I'm going to go outside and go feed the ducks and go for a walk. And I'm training my nervous system to go, hey, look at what time of day it is. And my system goes, oh, it's sleepy time. Here's a little melatonin here, Seabiscuit, like sleep, gosh, sleep. Then by the time like 9 o'clock rolls around, I have the lavender tea, another trigger gets set up. So my system goes, oh, that's right. Little lavender tea, we decompress, take some deep breaths and turn on some biofeedback. 9:30 comes rolling around, jump into the ice tub, I go upstairs, and then I meditate. And then it takes me like 2 to 3 minutes to fall asleep. It's done, sleep. Setting up those triggers and the consistency is just crazy important to all of this.
Couldn't agree with you more. And I just have to tap into that, because everything that you just said, for anyone listening right now or watching this, the reality is it is up to you to take the effort, to make the effort to make these things happen. It's not just going to happen. And this is speaking of somebody that literally, I was studied twice at the Stanford Sleep Clinic. I had insomnia for years on and off. And I will tell you right now, I was not doing a lot of the regulating stuff. I was not doing the consistency. And it's interesting because you would think, oh, well, if you were with doctors and doing all this, no, a lot of the times it was like, take this pill, let us know how you feel in 2 weeks, and we'll kind of assess from there. And then mind you, now I can say very consistently, I brain dump before bed. I keep my phone out of the room. I make sure that it's kind of cool. I got a really good pillow. I sleep on my back. I used to be a total side sleeper and stomach sleeper. So these certain things I had to do myself that it didn't happen overnight. So also for someone listening, and I will tell you right now, when I don't do these things, like on times where I'm traveling for work or whatever else, and I don't do the things that I normally do at home, damn straight my sleep gets affected. And I'm so aware of it. And it's funny because even the other day I stayed up a little bit late, a lot later than normal. I took Sophia and I surprised her and we went down to Disneyland. We stayed in the park till midnight. And so it was totally worth it. But in order to do so, mommy had a cup of coffee at 4 p.m., which I've also learned I cannot have coffee past noon. So had that cup of coffee, go through the park, have the best time ever. And then all night I'm like wide awake.
Yeah,
and like,
right?
and I'm just sitting there going, oh my gosh, this is so amazing how when we really listen, when we take the time to actually listen to our body's signals and then kind of take that like unlearning some stuff and then relearning stuff. Right. I just had to bring that up because I do know that people will reach out to me and they're like, all right, I hear what so-and-so is saying, but it's easier said than done. Or like, I'm not going to do that. Or is that some woo-woo stuff? Or I think that there's a lot of misconceptions for some surrounding like, the elements, like I know for me, meditation, journaling, like deep breathing, making a calming situation, like cleaning the room before I go in it so it's not like a shitstorm. All those things help me feel relaxed and able to get into that sleep. So now another question I wanted to ask you is, I have become a lover of naps. And of course there's, mixed stuff all over the place. And I started doing it years or when Sophia was born because I wasn't getting enough sleep, breastfeeding, whatever else. And I was like, I'm going to nap when I can, even if it's 20 minutes, sometimes it was an hour. And it seemed to help me. Do you have any fun science behind napping, good or not so good?
Yeah. So there's 2 phases of napping. First off, I just want to say like what you just mentioned about going to Disneyland and having like a cup of coffee at 4 p.m. Like this is why protocols are like so beautiful, because you can have a day like that where you just get to be a human and like you've created long-term memories with her and you get to go like live a life, right? And just like it's going to happen, days like that are going to happen, but you'll remember that, she'll remember that for the rest of her life. But you also have routines that you can come back to say like, great, I know that I stayed up a little later, had a little extra caffeine. So like maybe tomorrow I'm going to schedule in a nap while Sophia is sleeping so that I can like better rest and recover. Like gorgeous. You are just a gem of a human being inside and out. Just amazing. Back to your question, really awesome question. Naps are balling, like for sure. So there's regular naps where you're actually going into sleep. And if you're going to do that, the numbers, the time that you want to do is like a 35-minute nap, which is the time that you lay down until the alarm goes off, 35 minutes. Whether you sleep or not inside of that phase doesn't really matter. That's sleep research out of NASA. I think the like super statistical number was like 33 minutes or whatever, like round it up 35, right? Give yourself 2 extra minutes. The other one is 2 hours. So in 2 hours, you can basically hit one deep spindle sleep phase. And those are the two things. Now, there's something even more cool that would be beneficial for all our listeners to kind of go into. And this is not my research, not my work. This is Andrew Huberman's. He's out near you in Cali, living his best life. He started to kind of phase in something called non-sleep deep rest, which is essentially his combination of yoga nidras and hypnosis, clinical hypnotherapy, right? So this is not like like quack like a duck type of thing. This is Daniel Siegel, who is an MD, PhD, and all of this work building out something. The app is called Regal, or Regal, I think it is. But you can look up these things too. Basically, when you go into non-sleep deep rest, you're going in and allowing yourself to fall asleep if you would like. But in the process of that, you're training your system to kind of go into deeper states of rest, which are essentially 2xing the impact of your rest. So if you take a 20-minute nap, for example, if you did a 20-minute non-sleep deep rest, yoga nidra, hypnotherapy, session on your own, it would essentially equivalent to 40 minutes, right? So if you do a 30, it's like a full hour. And the research that's coming out on non-sleep deep rest is really amazing. But if you're somebody that's like a parent and you know your kid's taking like a 40-minute nap, I would highly recommend like getting into your ability to like get into those deep sleep states. Cause like I don't, nobody will ever argue like parenting is exhausting. Like it is hard. Right. And there's like definitely like the chemical, like you can definitely go like mess up your adenosine receptors, which is what caffeine does, it kind of slows the absorption of that. And you can go do that. But what is more important is creating things that are sustainable, right? So like, I think there's definitely days that are going to be dumpster fires where you put a crazy straw in a pot of coffee and you just live it. And that's just life today. But on the back end of that, you can start to build in habits, routines, and protocols to say, okay, I remember Dr. C and Jamie talking about this. What if instead of that cup of coffee, because I feel tired, I take a 20-minute little like power nap, right? And like, I will be the first to admit that I've even like turned on like docus for P. My daughter, her name's Phoenix, turned that on and said, hey, daddy's going to pop a squat over here. I have noise canceling airplane headphones and I'll let her sit on my lap and I'll fully plug into a 20-minute like non-sleep deep rest while she's like watching whales do like flips in Antarctica, right? Like just to like get myself back into motion because you want to have like a state change. And those things are really, really powerful. So naps, high five, non-sleep deep rest, high five. You can look up 30-minute yoga nidras. You can look up hypnotherapy on YouTube. Like they're all free and stuff like that. And then there's an app out there. I can't remember. I think it's, if you look up Daniel Siegel, it'll pull up that app, but it's essentially a free thing and they do research out of it, which is also really cool.
Okay, so speaking of apps and platforms and all the good things, we are now in the midst of embarking into the new year where resolutions are high and ambitions are high and all the stuff about making the changes of the world and within ourselves and all this tends to be this time that motivation all of a sudden sparks up. And I've seen it now in my field for the last 12 years. I really want to ask you, because as we're going into this, sleep was something that we're doing a whole physical self-care thing for 6 weeks, and sleep over and over. People were requesting, I did a questionnaire. They said, we want more with sleep. We want to hear from Dr. Chris Lee. We'd love to hear, more stuff on that. What about like can this be something that's just done over a lengthy period of time? Because I think so many of us have all these different barriers to entry of like, okay, well, I've got the kids and then my work schedule is kind of funky. And then I got, my spouse wants to stay up late and watch Netflix because it's the only time that we have together. Or, I hear all of these different situations, right? And it's like, of course, what you're describing and what I also am backing is that if we can most of the time, it's like most of the time eat the really clean, wonderful foods that you make at your home. Most of the time, get your exercise and movement in. It's like for me, I look at it as a most of the time thing. It's what you do most of the time, not sometimes. But for someone that's, in that moment of like, I want to make these changes, this and that, but wow, I feel like there's a lot of stuff going on. Is this something that can be done over the course of a long period of time? Does it need to be like some drastic measures? Is it kind of just up to each person to decide that for themselves? Like, what would you say when it comes to sleep?
Yeah, this is like a really powerful question. By the way, that app is called Reverie. I like have it on my iPad over here. But it's called
Okay,
Reverie for anybody
I'm
that's
gonna,
like
we'll
looking
we'll
that up.
share that. We'll share this because then we're also going to talk about Wired for Worthy in a
Yeah.
sec. Before I
Yeah,
let
it's
you
going to
go.
be great. So like when it comes down to it, I love the research that comes out on like New Year's resolutions, like, oh, it's January 21st, 3 weeks after, like, how's everybody doing? And like 87% of people have like dropped off. It's a really important message. And the people that make it from January 1st to January 1st consistently do one thing. They put thought, long-term thought into what they are actually doing. And this is how this kind of manifests, right? Like, all right, this is my year. I'm gonna lose weight, right? Like I want to be like 50 pounds, like better, low, whatever that is, right? Objective goals, really, really important. But what's also significantly important is that you don't put critical factors that are impossible, right? So if it's like you want to lose 50 pounds and it's January 1st, you're like, by January 14th, I'm going to lose 50 pounds. Like the only way that you're going to do that is through like amputation, right? Like, let me like, I don't need this left arm. It's not that important. Take it off of the wrist. Right? Like don't do things like that because your nervous system is also highly intelligent. So if you're doing something that you're like, oh my gosh, like I'm going to go out, I'm going to like run a marathon in like 3 weeks. Like you're not, you're going to walk 90% of that marathon. Like your system just cannot tolerate that. But if you gradually increase your ability to put effort and energy into those things, really, really important. So like back to the weight loss one, that's the most common one. I want to lose 50 pounds this year. I want to lose 20 pounds. Okay, really great objective goal. Break that down, right, into practical steps. So let's just say that we'll just go down to 48, right? 48 divided by 12 is 6. Is that right? Is it 6? 6 times is it 8? Is it 8? Is it 6? 6 times 12? It's important. Let's
I'm
just
like,
say,
yeah, it's
let's just
great. I'm just gonna say
let's just
yes.
say that number is accurate. Yeah, is it 6 times is 36? I think it's 8 pounds. I think it's 8. Let's just say it's 8 pounds. Doesn't matter. Carry the 3 with the 4 and 5. That's correct. So if you break that down, then we're going to go with it. It's going to be fine. So if you break that down, it's 8 pounds per month. Now, we also need to put in a learning curve to kind of be gentle with ourselves, right? So let's just say like month 1, all you have to do is I want to lose 4 pounds, right? That's a nice simple thing that you can kind of start to do. And here's how I'm going to do that, right? So by January 31st, I want to have lost 4 pounds, which is half a pound per week, right? Like now your system's kind of like, yeah, this is like nothing. I got this. Like that's easy. But it also needs to be in like that sweet zone of like, okay, I've learned that I can lose weight. So month 1, I'm just going to prove concept, right? Like I lost 4 pounds, like amazing. That was great. All I did was like, I walked an extra like a couple hundred steps, maybe a little intermittent fasting, this, that, and the other thing. Great. That's really achievable. And your nervous system, when it recognizes, oh, I lost 4 pounds, you release that dopamine, builds in pathways, habitual things. And it goes, yes, we did that. We can do it. And everybody kind of feels that like I can do it type of thing that gets fired up. Once you do that, you can increase the stretch zone or like the challenge that you have with your goals. So great, I did 4. I want to move it up to like 8 pounds. I want to see if I can double that in February. And if you say, great, I want to lose that amount of weight this month, and then you get to the end of February and say, oh, I only lost like 5 pounds. It's not like, oh crap, I still did it. No, you're still recognizing that you're moving the needle towards your goals. So there's an effect out there, a psychological effect that essentially tells you that what gets measured gets changed, right? This is why it's so important to like put objectives on that. So right now, if you are sleeping like total shit, what does that even mean to you? Right? Like, are you only getting 5 hours of sleep? Like, this is why I measure my biometrics consistently, because I can monitor and say like, oh, when I ate like a 12 pack of donuts before I went to bed last night, I slept like trash. Like, let's not do that another time. Right? Like, and then I can measure and reverse engineer what took me to that point. So if you're saying that your sleep is really bad, get a way to like measure that, right? Whether you're doing that subjectively, you wake up and you say like, I feel like garbage right now. Like it's a dumpster fire of a day. Mentally, physically, emotionally is like the very 3 simple things: mental, physical, emotional. How am I doing on a scale of 0 to 10? 10 being like optimal. Like, and I'm not even walking today. I'm just levitating. Great. Like put that down. And then every time you dip below 7, reverse engineer how you got there. yesterday, oh, that's right, I smoked a bunch of crack and like found a dry needle that I wanted to put into my arm. Oh man, that messed my sleep up so bad. Like smoking crack was a bad idea. And then you can say, oh, I'm not going to smoke crack anymore. Just for like, I don't recommend people go out and smoke crack. Like sometimes you just got to say that. So like you go backwards to like Steve Jobs has a quote, you can only connect the dots going backwards, right? And I really love that as well, to kind of like go bing, 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 bing. Here's how we got to where we are. So we learned to be bad sleepers. We learned to not love ourselves. We learned all of those things, which means they are reversible and unlearnable. But that also means you got to connect the dots going forward as well. Give yourself a path, give yourself predictability, give yourself and your nervous system something to anchor onto so that you can move forward. Then give yourself like, gosh darn grace to say, if you didn't do it at 100% today, that I'm a human, but tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm going to do it again, because that is the only option.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you brought this up. So everything that we do in the WAVE program is all about deciding what is the wellness in that area and that pillar, coming up with awareness of our reality check of like, where are we at right now, meeting ourselves in that moment, and then creating that vision, that clarity, that, what does it look like? Paint the picture, put the dots together, start to see the trends, and then put that energy towards the action of whatever it is that you need to be doing day in, day out, even when it doesn't go the way you want it. So it's so nice to hear you say that this also seems like it translates in something like sleep, where sleep is essential and vital to our well-being. Now, we are wrapping this up, and I kept you a little bit longer than I said, but whatever.
Totally.
I'm not mad about it, and I know nobody else is either. So you have an incredible platform that I love being a part of, and I want you to just talk about it for a moment. If you could share a little bit about Wired for Worthy and share a little bit
Yeah.
about your community, because I would love to merge our communities together and to bring, just so everyone knows, I met Dr. Chris Lee and immediately reached out and was like, I want to hire you. I want to learn from you, and I want you to help me in terms of rewiring my own brain and unlearning some things. And that's exactly what we did. And it's now led into a lot of different collaborations. So there is support in all different areas, and we just need to reach out for it and go for it. So I'd love if you could just give a little spiel deal on on all your goodies. Where can we find you?
Yeah.
How can we work with you?
Yeah. So I'm at Dr. Chris Lee, like anywhere. I also have a podcast called The Healthy Mind Fuck. You can go find that just like about anywhere. So I run a community called Wired for Worthy, which was genuinely built out of necessity. It was the thing that I wish I had more than anything when I didn't know what to do, but I knew that where I was wasn't where I wanted to be. And I was always looking for somebody that had some like research backed tools that wasn't just like blowing like mindset up my skirt. Not that I don't love having my skirt blown up, but like I needed practical tips, which I hope you guys got from this session as well. So the basic premise of Wired for Worthies, it's a co-regulation group built on the concept of how, right? Like, great, like I want to sleep better. And like you just told me all these facts about like how bad it is to not sleep, but like how do I get better sleep, right? That's like the how to like how do we do this? How do we do this? So it's built on using psychology, neuroscience, and high performance sports psychology, which is called high performance psychology now, and giving you tangible tips that can actually allow you to change your life 1% a day. And it's built on co-regulation. So we can regulate our own nervous system kind of very smoothly through mindfulness, meditation, everything we talked about, building consistent patterns. But one of the most basic primal instincts that we have is co-regulation, which just means inside of a social setting, there's a tone, right? So like people like coffee shops because there's a tone in that coffee shop, a social tone. And if we can get into a social tone of openness, transparency, honesty, we feel more open to express who we are and where we want to go with our life, right? So we can be seen as we are, not as we think people think we are, right? We see the world as we are, not as it is. So this group is really built out and designed for you to just be seen as you are. We have guided meditations that we do, where there's 40 hours of a living, breathing course inside of there. And I made it as affordable as humanly possible. We meet every single Thursday at 11:15 a.m. And then every other week now on Fridays at 11:15, we have book club. We just started a book club inside of the group, which is super cool. So it's got its own application, and we have our own Telegram chat, which is just crazy to say the very least. It's a bunch of squirrely people that think what I'm saying is interesting put into a group. So like we constantly are blessing it with sage and holy water because it's just a bunch of delinquents in there. But I love them dearly. I wouldn't change it for the world. So if you guys are ever interested in learning more about neuroscience and even potentiation, that's where we're at.
Okay, beautiful. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I definitely was not going to let you leave without letting everyone know where to find you, how to join your community, and how to be a part of this. You have changed so many lives. You continue to help people change their own lives. What you do is so beautiful. I do call you the unicorn man because you're a very special person in my life. And I just am honored to know you, and I look forward to all the things that we can collaborate on in the future. But for now, thank you so much. I just want to.
You're so welcome. As always, love. It's always amazing to connect with you. It's always just a blessing.
You're the best. Okay, well, everybody, go get your sleep. Go take a nap. Do the things that you need to do to cut the crap out and try to, see if you can implement some of these very tangible steps that Dr. Chris Lee just shared with us today. So once again, thank you for your time and your love, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining me here at What's the Word. Follow us on social media with the links on the screen, and don't forget to like and share with your friend. Your support helps us grow and continue to make inspirational content. See you next time on What's the Word.